Dear students, today we are going to see environmental assessment. That is, the impact of various environmental forces on our behavior. In this lesson, we are first going to deal with the space and its effects on behavior, pollution and its effects on behavior. Then we'll go on to do more details about noise pollution and its impact on behavior. And finally, we will see the impact of crowding on human behavior. The first one is personal space. Personal space is the comfort zones that we have. For some people, the comfort zones that they have is quite different from what others have. Especially people who are having low confidence levels and who have some personality problems, they are the ones who have a long range distance of personal space. But culturally, in all cultures, there is this concept of maintaining space between person to person. So, personal space that is there in between two people when they are interacting, or the distance that they maintain when they are interacting in a relationship. So, obviously, basing on the type of relationship, the distance also varies. Sometimes when we are speaking in public, then the distance between the stage and the audience will be quite far. In the classroom setting, the distance between the teacher and the student is more nearer than in a public addressing situation. And if it is between friends, the distance that they maintain also is much nearer than when they maintain distance if, for example, they are speaking with one of the teachers. And in intimate friendships and in intimate relationships, in say like in marriage relationship, the distance is much lesser. And also the activity that they are engaged in, that is also going to have an effect regarding the amount of distance that will be maintained. And there are gender differences that have been found regarding the kind of distance that has to be maintained. That is, when talking between the same gender, the distance that they maintain is different from the distance that opposite genders they maintain while say in their casual talk. And the preferences of this distance varies from culture to culture. Say in some cultures, they may not really want to maintain long distance, but in other cultures they have to maintain long distance, otherwise it is called as ill manners. So, cultural differences are also seen regarding maintaining of personal space. Now, there are so many studies that have been done by psychologists to identify which is the correct distance that has to be maintained for the kind of relationship. So, let us have a look at the findings of the research on chart. In this chart, it summarizes Edward T. Hall's classification of spatial zones, and that particular classification of spatial zones is called as proxemics. Here he has classified the spatial zones into 4 zones, and each zone has its different distance levels. For example, for zone 1, he names it as intimate space, and here the difference between individuals is 0 to 1.5 feet. Coming to zone 2, which he calls as personal space, here the distance is between 1.5 to 4 feet. Going on to the third zone, that is social space, the distance is 4 to 12 feet. Coming to the last zone listed by Hall, it is public space where distance of 12 to 25 feet or beyond has to be maintained. So, these are the distances for different kinds of relationships that have to be maintained. It is not that we tell the other person, if suppose it is a casual conversation with a neighbor, we don't tell them verbally that if we maintain this amount of distance, then only we feel comfortable, but we continuously give them non-verbal feedback regarding our comfort zones. Comfort zone is the distance that we feel that makes us comfortable. In different kinds of relationship, our comfort zones vary. So, we don't always verbally state, but if suppose there is a stranger who is coming into our personal space, we don't allow strangers to come into personal space, but when that happens, certainly verbally we try to first tell that stranger to move away. Still further, we feel sort of alarmed and sort of fear and anxiety develops within us, and we might even use physical force to push that person away from our physical space. So, comfort zones are sometimes verbally expressed when the need arises, and many times the comfort zones of the person is not verbally announced, but through childhood experiences and also through the process of what we call as socialization, a person gets to understand for what situation, what distance is comfortable both to the other person and to oneself. Now, there is a certain temperature range that is comfortable to the human beings. Say for example, during summers and during winters, our kind of behaviors change, because temperature has an impact on our, not only our psychological makeup but also on physiologically also it has an impact. For example, we feel more hungry in summer season than in during winter, because enzymes are supposed to be working at their optimal level when it is relatively warm rather than when it is relatively cold. So, increases in temperature or decreases in temperature not only affect our physiological functioning, but they also have a lot of impact on our psychological behaviors. So, very hot or very cold temperatures are not comfortable to the person, and the person's concentration abilities decrease, their level of patience also decreases, and because of that their levels of anxiety and stress keep on increasing. There are two things that happen here. Biologically, the system tries to adjust or maintain homeostasis because of changed environmental temperatures, and even psychologically the person tries to make an attempt to adjust to the changed temperatures. Of course, all of us know that very hot and very cold temperatures are not conducive for health, and sometimes they might even result in death. Let us see what happens when there are slight changes in temperature levels. Researchers from Princeton and University of California, they conducted a very important, very interesting study. They did meta-analysis of several research studies in this area of climate change and behaviors. They have included 60 studies spanning over several years. So, these studies were done by other researchers spanning different age periods, and also this research has been conducted by different people across the globe. So in meta-analysis study, as you all know, they take studies conducted by other researchers and they collect the data from those studies, and then they try to find any kind of interrelationships between them, and taking meta-analytic stand, they try to make further predictions and also identify further research trends. So in this study they had many researchers from different cultural backgrounds, and also these studies came from different countries all across the globe. But all of them had studied about the impact of temperature or climate change, especially on behavior. Now let us see the summary of their results. Please have a look at slide where you can see the summary of the researchers' findings. And they had found that when it comes to United States, the research results revealed climate change levels led to spikes in assaults and murders. But whereas climate change in Europe and South Asia especially has been linked to ethnic violence. And coming to India and Australia, it seems increases in temperature led to increases in domestic violence. And coming to Brazil, their land invasions have increased as temperatures have increased. And in Africa, it is noticed that changes in rainfall led to large scale violence. So whatever the country it might be, certainly changes in temperature has resulted in lot of aggressive tendencies by the citizens. So temperature has a direct effect on the level of emotional reactions, especially aggression seems to be on the rise universally. So the results of these researchers are really alarming in nature, because all over the world we have seen that climate changes are going to have adverse effects on the behaviors of the citizens. So here especially today there is global warming. Because of that, these researchers have predicted that there will be increase in violence and war like situations. They foresee a eruption of a civil war especially. So these researchers have concluded their findings suggesting that immediate measures be taken to control global warming, because temperature has a direct worldwide effect on behavior which is on the negative. So does noise have an impact on behavior has also been analyzed by the environmental psychologists and other social psychologists, and they found so many results which prove that continuous high levels of noise are detrimental to the physical and psychological social health of the individual. So any noise that is above our comfort zone, so for the human beings, we can listen to certain frequencies in the sound range. So any sound that is towards the extremes is certainly straining on us. Say if suppose the teacher speaks in class or explains about something in class, but if the voice level is very low, certainly that is going to irritate the students to some extent, because they have to overstrain themselves to understand what the teacher is saying, and also it has an impact on how they are going to understand about the topic. That will be really challenging. But on the other hand, even if the noise levels are very high, the teacher is explaining in a very loud voice, then also it's going to have adverse effect, because the students will feel tired very easily and also they get irritated very easily. So noise to be conducive for normal functioning has to be within a certain range. So, this noise, if it is especially in high tones, that is going to affect in many areas. It is also going to lead to partial deafness, and continued exposure to loud noise is going to harm the eardrums, and so it might result in permanent deafness. Let us see what are the other reactions for noise that researchers have identified. Here, apart from hearing impairment, there is decrease in efficacy levels. That is, the person's work output is going to be affected because there is a difference in the level of concentration. Because concentration levels are affected, naturally the work output level is also affected. Then other harmful effects of noise pollution are aggressive behavior. Because of noise pollution, the person reacts in an aggressive manner because that creates lot of strain and stress in the individual. And we find many times in loud parties, people get easily emotional, and many times when there are lot of picnics around, or when people are say even for example in a classroom situation. Other effects of noise is continued noise, especially if it is very high, it is going to have an impact on sleep. Now, if a person cannot have a rested sleep, or if the sleep circles are disturbed, then their behavior is changed in several ways. Their levels of reception will be affected, their concentration abilities are affected, and they will easily get fatigue. And because of that, their many other activities that they have to do, they will not do, and they also cannot enjoy their life if this noise continues for a prolonged time, which keeps on disturbing their sleep. Because a rested sleep is very much essential not only for the physiological health but also for psychological health. Other adverse effects of noise pollution is development of mental illness. Yes, if noise is continuously high and the person is continuously exposed to this high levels of noise, or is continuously exposed to noise pollution, there are many cases when the person is not able to cope any longer with that situation, and a mental illness suddenly develops. So, apart from having small impacts on behavior, noise also results in having severe impacts on the person's behavior. Now, let us see the effects of pollution on behavior. There are many types of pollution, like pollution of air, pollution of water, pollution in the food that we eat, pollution in the environment around us. It can be to minor changes in the environment, like not so harmful substances, but today, because of industrial civilization and also because of the scientific and technological advancements, there is so much of industrial development, and unfortunately every day newer and newer harmful substances are continuously being released into the environment. The pollution has gone so far that it is seeping into the water and the land systems. Today, if scientists try to study even fishes that are there thousands of kilometers below the sea level, even there they are finding traces of these chemicals. So, it indicates the extent of pollution that is present today. So, pollution is having lot of effect on all fronts, physically, psychologically, and it is also making lot of influence on several other aspects of functioning of the individual, because we have seen how the environment continuously affects a person's behavior. So, this changes, some of the changes or adverse effects of environmental pollution can be seen on the health effects of the individual. Because of this pollution, many people are facing so many health problems, and we know the impact of health on behavior. Because of improper health, or if there is of some pain in the body, then the whole reaction system is going to be affected. So, psychologically the person is no longer able to have the required energy levels to maintain or establish relationships, and also to do even everyday activities. Because of this, the other members in the family get affected, and as a result the whole social structure or social environment of the person gets affected because of prolonged illness, and especially if it is of chronic nature. And also, reducing health levels indicate that the patient's level of concentration and the person's level of adjustment is decreasing, because their levels of patience, their levels of understanding, their levels or capacities to be able to give caring and loving attention to others decreases. Because during illness the attention shifts from attending to others towards attending to oneself. Because of that physiological state of pain and illness, the person gets to get engrossed in himself or herself, and so they will be over emphasizing on their needs and their requirements, and forget about the needs and requirements of others. So, the physical condition results in lot of psychological maladjustments, and it results in social disruption. Now, when we say the word crowd, that is certainly give us a lot of negative impression, because being in crowds has never been a nice experience for any of us, because inherently we have what we call as personal space, and any time some person enters into our personal space, we feel lot of discomfort, and also we feel heightened levels of anxiety and stress. What is actually crowding? Crowding, according to environmental psychologists, is not how many people are there around us, or it is not exactly how much space is available for us, but they emphasize that crowding means the kind of perception that their personal space has been limited. So, here the word perception is important. So, research has also revealed that people tend to give more importance to how they perceive whether their personal space has been impinged upon or not, and are not so much bothered or affected by actual space or actual number of people. For example, they did a research on dormitory students, and they found that students who are placed in normal dormitory setting or in style like suits, they have found that although both these types of students are having equal number of people around them, and the space allotted to each student is not different, still those who felt that their personal space has been impinged upon, they are the ones who felt that their dorms are crowded. Of all the variables, the impact of crowding has been studied rigorously by the social psychologists and also by environmental psychologists. They have done numerous studies in this area, and let us summarize all the results on different aspects of crowding and their impact on behavior. Please have a look at slide. It's clearly listed the major findings of research in area of crowding. especially concentrating on the negative effects. For example, in animal studies, it has been found that high levels of stress, abnormal sexual activity, increased aggression, and also cannibalism. And some other research studies focused on prison studies, because recently there are many situations, many times we see in papers that all over the world there are so many prison violence is on the increase. So environmental psychologists try to research on prison environment, and their research findings revealed that crowding resulted in high BP levels, increased display of negative affect, and higher death rates for inmates who are in a crowded situation. Apart from that, environmental psychologists have also conducted some lab studies with respect to crowding, where they made lot of changes in the variables, where they have made manipulation of variables regarding to the number of people around them and the space variable. So in this results, it is indicated that participants' cognitive capabilities have been affected, and also there is decreasing levels of social interaction in a crowded situation. So environmental psychologists have given conclusive evidence regarding the kind of impact that environment factors such as crowding, space, noise pollution and other forms of pollution have on behavior.